Alice was never one for camping, especially in the woods. The thought of sleeping inside a tent, having nothing but that thin fabric for protection, it scared her, ever since she was a little girl. It wasn't the camping itself, but rather the thoughts of what could be in the trees around them. From some psychopathic serial killer that had been hiding in the forest for months, just waiting for a family such as hers to come along so he could give in to his burning desire for blood, to the Slender Man, watching from a distance, waiting to make Alice and her family the next victims of his kidnapping scheme. And although she knew that good old Slendy was a fictional character from the world of creepypasta, he still sent a shiver up her spine. And as if the woods weren't bad enough by themselves, she had a brother who didn't exactly help the cause for her fear to subside. Adam loved horror movies. Everything from Nightmare on Elm Street to Annabelle, he had seen it. If the movie had potential scare factor, he was there, ready with popcorn. Another added bonus to Adam's, in Alice's opinion, unhealthy obsession with horror was that he wrote his own horror stories, scribed the ideas down on paper. He wanted the world to read the thoughts within his dark and twisted mind, become the next Stephen King. That was fine with Alice, though she knew if this happened, she wouldn't be reading his books. They had taken him camping with them, a decision that had been made days before when they'd been planning the trip. She was hoping that since he was 18, old enough to take care of himself, that he would think that camping with the family wasn't cool, and he would rather be hanging out with his friends and picking up girls. But instead, he had agreed, and from that point on, Alice knew that the only peace she would be getting would be the drive there, and even then, he would probably be trying to freak her out by describing his newest story in detail. Deep down, though, she knew he would be better with them. Strength in numbers. And besides, he was family. She didn't want anything happening to him. She loved him just as much as she loved her parents. She had been right about her theory, though. There were scary tales all through the 4-hour drive. She could tell the camping trip was going to take a long time. Setting up hadn't been so bad. Getting the tents out of the car, securing them to the ground, moving her stuff into her own tent, gathering the firewood, watching the sun disappear behind the trees, cooking their dinner over the flames. It had all been fine. But as the moon had come out, and one by one her family had disappeared into the tents, the fear had started to build in Alice. She kept telling herself that there was nothing to be afraid of. Nothing was in the woods. It was all her imagination, convincing her that this was the night her life was going to end. Although she kept telling herself that the monsters were not real. Convincing herself that now she was 15 years old, it was about time she got over her childhood hang-ups. It seemed to be the antidote for her emotions, but when her brother put his plan into action, she knew that sleep would not be coming to her that night. He had obviously been thinking of the details the entire trip there, planning exactly how he was going to scare her. She was sitting by herself at the campfire, watching the flames, mesmerized by the way they twirled and danced across the wood, singing their midnight song to whoever was in ear range through a language of crackling tunes and tiny explosions, causing fireworks of embers to fly up into the night sky. It was then that she heard a rustle in the trees and looked up, seeing nothing but the blackness around her. "Hey Adam, I know you're out there, don't be an idiot." No answer, only if you counted the toot of an owl. A few seconds passed, then there was another rustle in the trees, but this time, it was followed by a low moan. "Dude, come on, I'm serious." No answer still. "Adam, it's dangerous to be out in the woods without anybody. One of those things could be out there. Another moan. She grabbed at the holster on her belt, but remembered she had stashed the pistol in her backpack at the start of the trip, and that backpack was now in her tent. Standing up and stepping backwards over the log that she'd been using for a seat, she had one last attempt to make sure it wasn't her brother that was in the trees. "Adam, I'm going to get my pistol now, so if you don't want to be shot, you better come clean." A second or two more of silence, then a voice from behind her.
What the hell are you going on about? It's like 11:30. Some of us would like to get some sleep, you know.
It was the voice of her brother. She had been wrong. He hadn't been pulling any prank on her. Something was in the trees moaning, making its way towards the family camp. She responded to Adam's words with a soft whisper, never taking her eyes off the forest in front of her. "Adam, do you have your gun?"
No, I left it in the tent. Why?
She swallowed before answering him. "Because there is something in the woods, and I'm pretty sure it's one of those things."
What, you saw it?
His voice had transformed from tired into worry in an instant. "No, but it made similar sounds, and I think it's getting closer."
So you're saying there's a...
"Just get your gun. I'll keep an eye out." She spoke as calmly as she could. There was no use in panicking. Panicking would only get her killed. As quick as he could, Adam ran off back to his tent. It was almost a minute before any more noise came from him.
I can't find it, damn it. It's not in my bag.
It was at this point that whatever she had been hearing was confirmed to be a real thing. The moans and the rustling was not due to her imagination making her hear things or conjuring up wild theories in real life. As it slowly made its way into the light, Alice saw it clearly. The front of its face was missing, exposing the bone underneath, almost looking as if it had been bitten off. Perhaps that's how the person had gotten infected. But this wasn't the time for discussion or theories. Its hair was a mess of knots, branches, and dry blood. It wore a white, long-sleeve collared shirt, and although it might have once been worn in a workplace, now it was covered in black stains and had countless tears in the fabric. The pants it wore looked to be in the same condition, although, unlike the shirt, they were also stained with blood. The definition of the word zombie had never been clearer to Alice than in that moment. "Adam, hurry!" As she yelled this, she started to move away from the zombie with an increased speed. It seemed to be moving towards her faster now, knowing somehow that she was unarmed, an easier meal to catch and feed on. There was no response from her brother, so she called out again. "Adam, come on!"
Can't find the damn thing.
Its moans were now turning into what sounded like low, gurgling growls. There was no more time to wait. She looked down, scanning the dirt and twigs for a stick, thick enough and sharp enough to pierce its skull with the force in which she would stab it. But there was nothing. They had burnt everything in the fire. That was when she decided that she couldn't wait for Adam to get his gun anymore. She had to make for her own tent and grab her own gun. She knew exactly where she had put it. Taking her eyes off the undead figure, she turned in the direction of her tent and started towards it. She didn't get far in her journey before another moan sounded out to her left. She turned her head, and fear gripped her heart. It was a second zombie, fatter than the last. A layer of half-peeled-off flesh hanging from the left side of its face. Its bloated stomach hung down over its knees, and in the dim light, she could see that maggots had started to chew away at the skin, hundreds of them wriggling around. Alice covered her mouth as she ran past the creature. It was no time to throw up. If she stopped, even for a second, the fat one would catch up to her, and she would be bitten. Getting to her tent, she dived in, straight away going for her backpack, unzipping it. Sure enough, the pistol lay inside, sitting on the top of everything. She thanked her past self for packing it in last, and then grabbed it, flicking the safety off and then crawling out of her tent. The fat one was the first to go. Aiming the pistol in its head and firing, the 9mm round flew through the air and hit its target dead on. A small portion of blood mixed with brain matter exploded from the back of the zombie's head, and not a second later, it had fallen forward, landing on its stomach with its head turned to the right side. As soon as she had fired the bullet, Alice turned her head to search for the other zombie. It wasn't long before she found it. It was at the entrance to her brother's tent, looking as though it was physically being pushed out. Then she saw one of her brother's feet on its head and knew exactly what he was trying to do. Without hesitation, she aimed the gun and fired. It wasn't a direct hit to the head, but the shot caused the zombie to fall over, giving Adam an escape route. He took it, and soon enough, he was at his sister's side.
There's more. Over there, we need to wake up Mom and Dad.
He pointed towards the campfire, and her head followed. There were 4 more, all of them coming out of the forest. Well, what are we waiting for? They both began towards the tent, but stopped in their tracks as they saw their father emerging from it, a submachine gun in his hand.
Get in the tent.
But
Just get in the tent, no arguing.
the pair did as they were told, and as they filed into the tent behind their father, the submachine gun lit up, firing for what Alice estimated to be 10 seconds before the bullets stopped. All was silent. After a few seconds, their father turned from the outside world, crouched down, and talked to them.
The coast is clear. Grab your stuff and pack it into the car. Then we will pull down the tents. We have to get out of here. No doubt there are more in the area. We might even be facing a horde. Come on, hurry up.
And they had done exactly what he had asked, packing up everything they owned, putting it in the back of the car, and getting out of there within 15 minutes. The undead were coming. When they left, the fire had still been burning, still playing its midnight song. Perhaps the nocturnal animals had pricked their ears up and began to listen. Alice hoped so. There had been no time to put it out. On some level, she was thankful for that. At least it was the one thing that resembled something normal in the world. Everything else in her life had changed dramatically over the past few weeks, but staring at the fire had reminded her of a normality. A normality she knew she would never feel again. As they drove off into the night, Alice looked out the window, watching the world go by at 45 miles per hour, the events of the last half hour going through her head. She hated horror, and she hated that her brother liked the genre. But now, in an exhausted, bloodshot-eyed state, she wished it had been the Slender Man in the forest. She wished it had been any monster from the world of creepypasta. Jeff the Killer, Laughing Jack, Funny Mouth. She would even take the rake. Then, at least, she wouldn't have to believe that there was no more room in hell, and now the dead were walking the earth. She wouldn't have to believe that what her family were both driving away and toward was the end.